There is a strange moment in life that most of us have experienced. One day, you wake up and realize you're simply exhausted. Not because of some major event, not because of something unbearably painful, but because, for a long time, you've been quietly carrying a feeling you couldn't quite name. Why does everything always happen to me? When someone leaves, you think maybe you weren't good enough. When an opportunity slips away, you think maybe you just don't have the luck. When a door closes, you begin to believe that life is trying to block your path. And then, very slowly, you begin to change the way you step into the world. You become more cautious. You think twice before acting. You brace yourself for disappointment, even before anything has happened. Because somewhere deep inside, a belief has taken root. Life isn't really on my side. But here's the strange thing. There are people who have gone through the same losses as you. They've failed too. They've been hurt too. They've stood at moments when everything seemed to be falling apart. But somehow, they didn't become bitter. They didn't come to see the world as a dangerous place. In fact, after those hardships, they became calmer, deeper, and stronger. So what makes the difference? Are they simply luckier? Does life treat them better? Or is there something deeper happening within the human mind? The psychologist Carl Jung spent much of his life studying this very question. What truly determines how a person experiences their own life? And his answer didn't lie entirely in what happens on the outside. Jung realized that two people can walk through the exact same storm. But one sees it as a sign that life is trying to destroy them. The other sees it as a chance to discover a strength they never knew they had. The same storm, but a different inner world. And it's that inner world which determines how each of them moves forward. This doesn't mean every suffering has a clear reason. It doesn't mean we should pretend to be happy while we're hurting. And it certainly doesn't mean the hard things in life don't matter. Quite the opposite. Jung believed that the hardest moments often carry a quiet invitation. Look deeper into yourself. Because sometimes, the first thing that needs to change isn't the outer circumstance, but the way we look at it. Imagine standing in front of an old mirror. If the glass is covered in dust, the reflection inside will look distorted. You might think the world in front of you is warped. But in truth, the problem was never the image. The problem was the layer of dust on the mirror. The human mind works the same way. Old memories, unhealed fears, beliefs formed out of past wounds. All of these create an invisible lens that we carry with us every day, every time we step out the door, without even realizing it. And through that lens, we see the world. That's why two people can stand before the exact same event and yet live in two completely different worlds. One sees opportunity in the wreckage. The other sees only an abyss waiting to swallow them. One steps into a conversation with openness. The other steps into that very same conversation guarded, as if bracing for battle. The outer world doesn't change nearly as much as we think. What truly changes is the inner world each person carries with them into that circumstance. In other words, the outer world is like a vast mirror, and the mind is what decides which image gets reflected back. I once felt this truth in a perfectly ordinary evening. That evening, I was sitting alone in a small, familiar tea house on the corner of the street, where warm yellow lights spilled over the old wooden tables and soft guitar music drifted from an aging speaker. I was waiting for a work meeting, idly flipping through a few pages of a book, when the door opened and a familiar figure walked in. It was Emily, an old classmate I hadn't seen in nearly 6 years. We used to be very close, until one small misunderstanding, born from a careless comment at a class reunion, quietly pulled us apart, neither of us willing to be the one to speak up first. The moment Emily's eyes met mine and she recognized me, I felt a clear surge of tension run down my spine. In just a few seconds, my mind pulled up an entire archive of memories. That comment from years ago, the long silence that followed, the awkwardness I'd been certain would never be resolved. I was almost sure this encounter would be suffocating. But what happened next was the complete opposite of everything I had built up in my head. Emily walked over, smiled naturally, and said, "It's been so long. How have you been?" The outside world may not actually hold those things at all. It's simply that the mind has grown accustomed to searching for them. Maybe you have spent years asking why certain people hurt you, why certain patterns keep repeating, why the same kind of heartbreak, the same kind of rejection, the same kind of disappointment keeps finding its way back into your life, no matter how hard you try to avoid it. Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in trying to control the world more. Perhaps the answer lies in beginning to understand more clearly the world that exists within you. That's why Jung believed the journey of understanding the world always begins with the journey of understanding oneself. When a person starts observing their own reactions, what irritates them, what angers them, what makes them feel threatened, they are touching the most hidden parts of their own mind. Those reactions are like signposts, pointing to the places within the psyche where an old, unresolved story still lingers. Most people spend their whole lives trying to change the outer world. They want to change circumstances, change other people, change situations. But Jung believed the deeper path usually runs in the opposite direction. Look inward first. When the light of awareness begins to shine into that inner world, the way we see people, circumstances, and our own lives becomes gentler, clearer. The outer world may remain exactly as it was. But in the stillness of that awareness, we begin to realize we are no longer being swept along by old reflections. We are learning to see life through deeper, freer eyes. But understanding the world inside you is only the beginning. Because even after we recognize our own wounds, another question remains. Why do we keep repeating the very patterns we once promised ourselves we would change? In this video, we'll explore 5 profound truths inspired by the thought of Carl Jung. Truths that may lead you to look back on the failures that once broke your heart, the relationships that once wounded you, the moments you believed life had turned its back on you. Because perhaps not everything that happens comes to break you. Sometimes, it comes to lead you back to a deeper part of yourself. And the greatest change in a person's life often begins the moment they realize. Maybe life has never truly been against you. Maybe it's simply been trying to lead you toward a more mature version of yourself. There is something so many of us have experienced, yet so few dare to admit. You've stood in front of a mirror and told yourself, starting tomorrow, I'll be different. You've written out a list of everything you wanted to change. And in that moment, you truly believed the promise. But then tomorrow came, and you woke up, did the same familiar things, fell back into the same old reactions, as if last night's promise had never existed. You ask yourself, why do I know I want to change and still can't? Perhaps the answer isn't a lack of willpower. Perhaps the answer lies in a truth few of us were ever taught. The deepest part of your mind doesn't listen to the things you tell yourself. Carl Jung believed that beneath the layer of consciousness, where we think, reason, and try to convince ourselves through words, lies a deeper layer of the mind, the unconscious. And the unconscious has a strange trait. It isn't persuaded by the beautiful words we repeat to ourselves each day. It doesn't argue with us. It doesn't analyze the way the rational mind does. It simply watches, quietly, to see how we actually live. From Jung's perspective, a person isn't truly defined by what they say about themselves, but by the actions they repeat every day. He once wrote a line so short, yet sharp enough to make you stop and think. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. This line touches on a psychological truth most of us try hard to avoid. A person can talk endlessly about wanting to change their life, wanting to become stronger, more confident, or a better version of themselves. But if their daily life is still driven by old habits, old reactions, old fears, then at the deepest layer of the mind, the unconscious keeps believing the same familiar story. It doesn't remember promises. It only remembers what has been proven through action. There's a story I once read about a man named Daniel. For years, Daniel told himself he was a shy person, that he wasn't good at communicating, and that he always would be. Every time he had a chance to speak up in a meeting, he stayed silent and let others speak for him. Every time he wanted to meet someone new, he found a reason to hold back. He'd read plenty of self-help books, written affirmations every morning. I am confident. I am strong. I deserve to be heard. But those words never seemed to reach the person he actually was. Because every single day, his actions kept telling a completely different story. Until one afternoon, in a small team meeting, Daniel decided to do something very simple. He raised his hand and spoke up. Even though his voice shook slightly, even though his heart was pounding so hard, he could barely hear himself speak. Nothing miraculous happened right away. No one applauded. No one told him he'd completely changed. But something very small shifted inside him. For the first time in years, his actions no longer matched the old story he still believed about himself. He kept doing it, week after week. It wasn't always smooth. There were times he still trembled, still stumbled over his words, still wanted to back out halfway through. But he kept raising his hand. Months later, a coworker said something that made him pause. "You're actually a pretty confident person, you know." Daniel almost laughed, because for years, he never imagined anyone would describe him that way. But his unconscious had come to believe it. Not because he had told it he was confident, but because he had acted like a confident person long enough, often enough, that it had no choice but to rewrite the story. To understand this mechanism more clearly, imagine the unconscious as a vast forest. Every action you take is like a footstep passing through that forest. A single step might leave no visible trace. But when the same path is walked hundreds, even thousands of times, a trail begins to form. Over time, that trail becomes the easiest path through the forest. And whenever you're faced with a new choice, the unconscious tends to pull you back toward the most familiar path, even when that isn't the path you actually want to walk. That's how habits and identity are formed in the human mind, not through bold declarations, but through small actions, repeated long enough. Whatever you do each day, no matter how small, is quietly becoming the story your unconscious believes about you. And once the unconscious believes that story long enough, it begins guiding how you think, how you feel, and how you step into the world. Carl Jung saw human transformation through this lens. He didn't believe people change simply by thinking differently. Real change begins when a person starts living differently, even if only slightly. When someone begins acting in the direction of the person they want to become, they're sending entirely new signals into the deeper layers of the mind. At first, this kind of change often feels deeply unnatural. Someone used to shrinking into themselves will find it strange to start speaking their thoughts out loud. Someone used to procrastinating will find it difficult to start doing, right away, the very thing they've always avoided. But to the unconscious, what matters isn't whether that feeling is comfortable. What matters is that the signal of the action has changed. Once these new signals are repeated long enough, something quite interesting begins to happen. The emotions we assume must come first, confidence, clarity, a sense of readiness, gradually start appearing after the action instead. What once felt awkward slowly becomes familiar. What once frightened us slowly becomes normal. Not because the circumstances changed first, but because the inner map has begun to change. So real transformation rarely begins with a grand decision or a bold promise. It usually begins with one small, genuine action, a small choice you make today, a step you've always avoided taking before. When those small actions are repeated long enough, the unconscious gradually rewrites the story it believes about you. And when the story inside changes, the way you step into the world changes with it. If this part made you pause, even for a moment, and look back at how you're living, leave a thought in the comments. Sometimes change doesn't begin with some grand decision, but with a very small moment, when you're honest enough to look at yourself and say out loud what you've just realized. A thought written down, something shared, is already, in itself, an action. And as Jung once suggested, It's those small but genuine actions that quietly shape the person we are becoming. If small actions, repeated long enough, can rewrite the story your unconscious believes about you, then a natural question arises. Who might you become if you kept walking in that direction far enough? This is the moment when another part of the human mind begins to stir. Jung realized that within every person lies a quiet force that always wants to push past old limits, to step out of its own shadow. He called it the hero archetype. The hero here isn't some sword-wielding figure out of legend, someone who has never known fear. The hero Jung spoke of is a psychological capacity that already exists within every human being. The capacity to rise, to face fear, and gradually become the truest version of oneself. There's a story I once read from someone in this community about a man named James. From the outside, James's life looked perfectly stable. He had a steady office job, enough income to live comfortably, a tidy little apartment, and a routine that repeated from Monday to Friday like clockwork that had already been wound. But inside, James carried a quiet, nagging feeling that he was living a life that didn't truly belong to him. Each day passed like another link in a chain of repeated habits. He wasn't exactly unhappy, but he had never felt he was living as the person he truly was. As a young man, James had been passionate about drawing. He'd once dreamed of becoming an architect, spending hours sketching houses in an old notebook. But then someone he deeply respected, a family member, said something he never forgot. That's not a practical career. That single sentence was enough to make James put the notebook away in a drawer, never to open it again, for almost 20 years. One evening, after watching a video about Jung's ideas, James asked himself a very simple question, one that kept him awake all night. If I keep living like this for another 10 years, will I feel like I've truly lived? The question clung to him for weeks. That night, he dug through an old box in his closet and found the sketchbook from all those years ago, the lines faded with time. He sat looking at it for a long while, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the regret he had buried for 2 decades. Then he decided to try changing one very small thing. He set aside a few hours each week to study design again, just to see if that old flame was still there. At first, it was only a small shift in his schedule. Nothing dramatic happened right away. But after several months, James realized something inside him had begun to feel different. Not because his life had suddenly become easier, but because he had begun to see himself as someone capable of moving in the direction he truly wanted. What mattered wasn't that James changed jobs or overhauled his entire career. What mattered was the moment he dared to reopen the notebook he'd buried for 20 years and step toward the thing he had always hesitated over. In Jungian psychology, that is precisely the moment the hero archetype begins to stir. The hero doesn't appear when everything is already clear. The hero appears when a person dares to step into the unknown. They don't know for certain what lies ahead, but they keep walking anyway. Jung believed every person carries within them a great deal of potential that has never been fully lived. But most of the time, that potential is buried under the roles we've learned from society. We learn to stay safe, learn to avoid mistakes, learn to follow paths that have already been laid out for us. Those roles gradually become a psychological mask that Jung called the persona. This mask helps us adapt to the world. But if we live inside it for too long, we can slowly forget who we truly are. That's why Jung believed the most important journey of a lifetime isn't becoming some ideal image in the eyes of society. The most important journey is gradually becoming yourself. One of the most important ideas in Jung's thought is this: the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This idea isn't about some sudden moment of awakening. It's about a long process in which a person slowly sheds the layers they once wore to adapt to the outside world. In the process Jung called individuation, a person begins to look directly at the parts of themselves they once avoided. It might be the fear of failure. It might be the feeling of never being good enough. It might be dreams they once believed were too far out of reach. When those parts are seen clearly, something interesting begins to happen. Instead of continuing to run from them, the person begins to move toward them. And in that very moment, the hero within begins to awaken. Picture a person as a seed buried deep in the earth. For a long time, from the outside, it looks as though nothing is changing. But beneath the dark soil, a quiet process is underway. The seed is splitting open, growing roots, preparing for the moment it will reach toward the light. When the sprout finally breaks through the soil and appears above ground, we call that the beginning. But in truth, the beginning happened long before that, in the darkness where no one could see it. The awakening of the hero within a person works much the same way. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It's the result of countless experiences, countless thoughts, countless small actions, accumulating over time. Every time a person dares to step a little further outside their comfort zone, they're helping that seed grow stronger. Jung believed that people don't truly mature by avoiding their fear. They mature by daring to step into the unexplored parts of themselves. That doesn't mean life becomes easier. In fact, the first steps of this journey are often accompanied by instability and uncertainty. But it's precisely in those uncertain spaces that a person begins to discover the strongest parts of themselves. The hero in Jungian psychology isn't someone who feels no fear. The hero is someone who keeps walking while the fear is still there. They don't wait for everything to become perfect. They walk while the path is still unclear, while the answers are still not fully formed. And it's those very steps that, little by little, shape the person they become. Over time, as a person keeps walking this way, the way they see life begins to change too. Hardships once seen only as failure now begin to be seen as necessary trials. Moments of instability are no longer just something to avoid, but become a natural part of the journey of growth. The lesson of this part is very clear and very profound. The hero we've always been searching for in great stories has, in truth, always existed within every human being. It doesn't wait for some perfect moment to appear. It only waits for the moment you dare to take a step, even a very small one, toward the person you truly feel you want to become. And perhaps the most important journey of a lifetime isn't the search for strength somewhere out there. It's the journey of gradually realizing the power to change your life has always lived within you, waiting only for the moment you're brave enough to awaken it. Yet once a person begins to recognize the deeper call within themselves, they also come face to face with another truth. The road ahead rarely appears with perfect clarity. There are seasons in life when we no longer wish to return to the old road, but the new one is still hidden in the distance. It is in moments like these that faith becomes deeply important. Not faith in the religious sense necessarily, but a psychological ability. The ability to continue moving through uncertain parts of life when reason alone cannot yet show us the way. Life rarely gives us a complete blueprint. In fact, many of the most important turning points in a person's life arrive precisely when the path ahead is still unclear. Jung believed that human beings need an inner trust in life, a willingness to move forward even when the entire path has not yet been revealed. Not blind certainty, not the belief that everything will happen exactly as we want, simply the courage to take the next step. A powerful symbol of this appears in the biblical story of Peter walking on water. While the disciples remained inside a boat during a storm, they saw Jesus walking toward them across the waves. Peter asked to step out of the boat and walk toward him. And in that first moment, he actually did. But the instant he looked down at the waves and allowed fear to take over, he began to sink. Symbolically, this story reflects something deeply human. The moment Peter focused only on the storm around him, he lost connection with the inner conviction that had allowed him to move forward. In psychological terms, this is what often happens inside us. When trust guides our actions, We become capable of moving beyond limits we once believed were impossible. But when fear becomes the only thing we see, even the strongest step can begin to collapse. In Jungian psychology, this reflects the journey of individuation. When a person begins living more truthfully according to who they really are, they often have to leave behind familiar structures that once made them feel safe. New choices rarely arrive with complete certainty. Sometimes there is only a quiet inner feeling that says, "This is the direction I need to move toward." And in those moments, faith becomes a psychological fuel that helps a person continue walking when reason still doesn't have all the answers. There's a story I once came across about a woman named Claire. For years, Claire worked a stable job in accounting, the kind of career her family had always been proud of. But deep inside, she carried a quiet attraction toward something else, teaching. Not a dramatic dream, not a desire to completely reinvent herself, just a small feeling that appeared every time she helped a co-worker's child with homework, every time she explained something and watched someone's face light up with understanding. She didn't have a teaching degree. She had no classroom experience. And at 34 years old, many people around her believed it was too late to begin again. Every practical voice told her the same thing. It isn't safe. It isn't certain. What if it doesn't work? But one autumn, Claire enrolled in a part-time program to become certified. She had no guarantee that a school would hire her. No guarantee that this new path would work. She only had a quiet conviction that this direction felt closer to who she truly was. The first year was difficult. She earned less. She questioned herself constantly. There were nights when she wondered if she had made a mistake. But she kept walking forward, one step at a time, without ever seeing the entire road ahead. 2 years later, standing in front of her own classroom for the first time, Claire realized something. The opportunities that had appeared. The mentor who guided her. The school that gave her a chance. None of those things had been visible when she was still sitting at her accounting desk. They were there all along. She simply had not been walking toward them yet. There is something fascinating about the human mind. When we begin moving towards something meaningful, we start noticing things that were invisible to us before. Opportunities that always existed suddenly become easier to recognize. People who can help us seem to appear at exactly the right moment. Neuroscience offers an interesting explanation for part of this. The brain contains a filtering system called the reticular activating system, which helps determine what information we pay attention to. The world around us is filled with countless signals, possibilities, and opportunities. But the mind cannot notice everything. It highlights what it believes matters. When a person begins moving in a new direction, this internal filter begins changing. New possibilities connected to that path become easier to see, not because they suddenly appeared, but because the person finally became ready to notice them. When action changes, perception changes with it. Imagine someone walking through a dark forest at night, holding a small flashlight. The light only reveals a few steps ahead. If that person refuses to move until they can see the entire road, they will remain standing in the same place forever. But if they take one step forward, the light reveals the next part of the path. Then another step. Then another. The whole journey is never shown at the beginning. Only enough of the journey to continue. Human life often works in exactly this way. Jung believed many people remain trapped not because they lack ability, but because they wait for certainty before they begin. They want guarantees. They want proof. They want to know the ending before they are willing to start the story. But the most important transformations in life rarely happen in places of certainty. They happen at the border between the familiar and the unknown. And at that border, every person faces the same choice: return to what is safe, or step toward what is calling them. When someone finally crosses that boundary, they often discover something surprising. They were far stronger than they ever imagined. New abilities appear. New paths begin forming. Not because life suddenly changed overnight, but because they finally began living from a different place inside themselves. The practical lesson is simple. You do not need to solve your entire future today. You only need the next step. A conversation you've been avoiding. A skill you've wanted to learn. A small decision that moves you closer to the person you feel you are meant to become. When those small steps are taken, the path slowly reveals itself in ways you could never have predicted. If there is a path in your life that you feel drawn toward, even if it is still unclear, leave a simple sentence in the comments. I choose to walk with faith. Sometimes writing those words is already an act of commitment. A reminder that every meaningful journey begins the same way, with one small step into the unknown. But even the most faithful step forward eventually leads to a deeper realization. We do not walk this road by controlling everything that happens. We are not the only authors of the story unfolding before us, because perhaps the deepest lesson is not learning how to control life. Perhaps it is learning how to walk with life, even when we cannot yet see where the road leads. After everything we have explored, one final question remains. If life is not something we can fully control, if the path is not always clear, if change requires us to face parts of ourselves we would rather avoid, then what does all of this mean? Perhaps the answer is this. Life was never only happening to you. It was also happening within you. Every loss, every disappointment, every moment when something you desperately wanted slipped away. These moments often feel like endings. But sometimes they are not endings at all. Sometimes they are invitations. Invitations to become someone you could not have become in any other way. Carl Jung believed that the deepest journey of human life is not about creating a perfect existence. It is about becoming whole, becoming aware of the hidden parts of ourselves, the fears we avoid, the wounds we carry, the dreams we abandoned, the parts of ourselves we buried because the world once told us they were not acceptable. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of slowly becoming the person we were always capable of becoming. Not someone new, but someone more complete. There is a story I once heard about a man named Michael. For most of his adult life, Michael believed he had been unlucky. He had spent nearly a decade building a small furniture business, only to watch it collapse when a larger supplier undercut him overnight. A relationship he thought would last forever ended not long after. And in the space of a single year, he felt as if life had quietly taken everything from him. For a long time, he kept asking the same question. Why did this happen to me? He looked at every closed door as proof that life was against him. Every failure became evidence that he was not enough. But years later, sitting in a small workshop behind his house, Michael realized something he could never have seen while he was still inside the pain. In the months after the business failed, out of sheer restlessness, he had started restoring old, broken furniture for neighbors, just to fill the empty hours. It turned out he was better at it, and loved it more than he ever had running the business itself. That quiet, unnoticed talent had been sitting inside him the entire time. It had simply never had the room to surface until everything else was stripped away. The thing he thought had been destroying him had, without his noticing, been rebuilding him. This is one of the most difficult truths about growth. We often recognize transformation only after it has already happened. A seed buried beneath the ground might believe the darkness is the end, but the darkness is where its roots begin to grow. A butterfly might believe the walls of the cocoon are a prison, but those same walls are part of the process that allows it to fly. Human beings are not so different. There are seasons when life feels like it is taking things away from us. But sometimes, what is being removed is not meant to destroy us. It is something we had already outgrown. Many people spend years asking, why did they leave? Why did this opportunity disappear? Why didn't life go the way I planned? But perhaps a deeper question exists. What is this experience trying to teach me? Because the moment we change the question, we begin changing the relationship we have with life. We stop seeing every obstacle as an enemy. We begin seeing challenges as messages. This does not mean every painful experience happens for a reason. It means that even within painful experiences, we can discover something that helps us grow. Jung believed that what we resist often contains something important for our growth. The parts of life we try hardest to avoid may hold the very lessons we most need to learn. The fear we avoid may reveal where we need courage. The pain we avoid may reveal where we need healing. The uncertainty we avoid may reveal where we need trust. Growth does not come from escaping ourselves. It comes from meeting ourselves honestly. Maybe this is why some people emerge from hardship completely changed. Not because their life became easier, but because they became deeper. They stopped asking, "Why is life doing this to me?" and slowly began asking, "What is life trying to awaken within me?" That single shift changes everything. Because when you stop fighting every moment of your life, you create space to understand it. Perhaps the greatest freedom a person can discover is not the ability to control everything. It is the ability to trust the process of becoming. To understand that every chapter, even the painful ones, is shaping something within you. The person you are today was created by every decision you made, every challenge you survived, every moment you thought you could not continue, but somehow did. Do you remember the storm we spoke of at the very beginning? Two people, walking through the exact same wreckage, living in two entirely different worlds? Maybe that storm was never proof that life was against you. Maybe it was simply the moment the dust on the mirror finally began to be seen. Maybe the closed doors were not always rejection. Maybe the endings were not always losses. Maybe some things had to leave because they were making space for something deeper, something stronger, something more aligned with who you are becoming. The journey inward is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires courage. It requires the willingness to face the parts of ourselves we once tried to hide. But somewhere along that journey, we discover something extraordinary. The person we were searching for was never somewhere outside of us. They were waiting quietly within us all along. Maybe the hardest moments of your life were not signs that you were losing your way. Maybe they were the moments that were quietly preparing you to find it. Because sometimes, life does not take things away to punish us. Sometimes, it removes what we have outgrown. So we finally have space to become who we were always meant to be. Life was never trying to break you. It was trying to lead you back to yourself. OUTRO, if any part of this video found its way into something you're carrying right now, I want you to know something. You are not alone in it. There are seasons in life when we all wonder why things keep happening the way they do. Why certain doors close. Why certain people leave. Why some chapters end before we feel ready. And maybe one day, when you look back, you'll see those moments differently. Not as the things that broke you, but as the things that quietly shaped you into the person you are becoming. If these 5 truths meant something to you, take a moment to reflect on the one that stayed with you the most. And if you feel comfortable, write it in the comments below. Not for us, but for yourself. Because sometimes, putting a feeling into words is the first honest step toward understanding it. If you'd like to continue exploring the deeper layers of the human mind through the lens of Carl Jung, consider subscribing. Every week, we share new reflections about self-awareness, healing, and the journey of becoming more fully yourself. And if someone in your life has been quietly asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" Maybe this video was meant to reach them too. Share it with them. Because sometimes, the greatest gift we can give another person is not an answer. It is the reminder that they are not alone while searching for one. Thank you for walking through this journey with us today. And remember, maybe life was never against you. Maybe it was simply guiding you back to yourself. We'll see you in the next one.